Is the PUMA Deviate Nitro Elite really an elite shoe? Let's start unboxing. Now the heel height is 36mm, 28mm at the toes, which is on the high side. Given the cut of the shoe, it doesn't really look all that high. That gives it an 8mm drop, which is in my sweet spot. I really like a 8 to 10mm drop in shoes. Elite suggests a race shoe, and I'm really looking for some lightness in my race shoe. Well, for a US size 9 men's, I get 196 grams on my scale, definitely on the light side. But looking at the shoe, it doesn't stand out as being a race shoe. Contours of the shoe, well, looking smooth, they just make it look like, well, a normal running shoe in the everyday category, to be honest. The shoe doesn't even scream that it's a carbon plated shoe. It is revealed when you turn it over at the bottom in this cutaway. But other than that, carbon plated doesn't stand out. One thing that does stand out is the transparent upper. Kind of looks like a mesh, but it's solid. There's no holes in there. It feels very plastic-like, nothing like the normal materials of any upper. The tongue itself is still the same material as the rest of the upper. Now I'm not sure if it's stitched in as an extra piece here or if it's still one piece going through. Can't quite tell because it's hidden underneath this reinforcement there. Now it's soft on the edges and at the top of the tongue with this soft material, and that even runs on the inside as well, keeping the tongue feeling nice and soft against the foot there. The tongue isn't gusseted, and without any loop for the laces to go in to hold its place, I was actually pretty worried that it's going to slip and slide, but on further inspection, I've noticed that on the medial side, just where that soft material is on the midfoot, right about there, the tongue is stitched in, and maybe that's enough to keep that tongue in place. The lacing looks pretty similar to the original Deviate Nitro. Seems to have the same sort of lacing pattern, but I did find with the Elite version, I didn't have to use a heel lock, but what I did do is I laced it all the way up to that top eyelet there. And without using that top eyelet, I found there was too much play at the opening of the shoe and my foot slid just that little bit. For the heel collar, there's no TPU reinforcement, no hard plastic here. In fact, it's actually quite soft and bends the whole way there. Instead, the slight bit of reinforcement is a soft material that goes up and over the top, both on the outside and inside. I had some concerns that with that sort of raised stitching that we have there, it might be a point of blistering or rubbing. Now, I didn't find that to be the case for myself. As soon as you get away from any smoothness at the back of the heel, it has me a little bit concerned. Also, like the original version, the Elite version has the padding that goes in on the sides here. Now, it goes in up against just before it reaches the Achilles and actually helps lock it in that little bit. I found this one a little bit better, maybe a little bit softer in this version than in the originals. I didn't experience any slippage in the heel. Now flipping this bad boy over to the sole. The outsole looks very similar to the non-Elite version. Main difference is this outer rubber is definitely a lot thinner. It's probably about the half the thickness. The triangles here are ribbed instead of dimpled. Grip on the road should be about the same, maybe slightly less, but one thing that it won't do is it won't last as long. It's just less material here. Now the light blue material here, that's the Nitro foam. It's soft, it's squishy, but it does bounce back reasonably quickly. Also above the light blue, we have this darker blue, and that's a second layer of Nitro foam there. Now between these two layers, and it doesn't really stand out here on the sides, the only place to see it is through this cutaway, the PUMA Deviate Nitro's Elite carbon plate. Puma are calling it the inner plate. Now the difference in this plate, it is meant to be quite a step up from the composite plate used in the original Deviate Nitros. In the Elite, it's meant to be better. Whether that means more response, snappiness, faster ride, well, I guess that's all to be revealed in the runs themselves. Which brings us to the fun part. How do they feel and how do they perform? So straight out of the box, onto my feet, I actually felt quite comfortable. Not amazingly comfortable as the Velocity Nitro 2s did, but they're the right shape, the right size, right fit for me. They feel light, which I was hoping for. But during my first warm-up, I was really worried I wasn't going to like this shoe. I felt really mushy underfoot, almost to the level of being unstable. They just had no response, felt overly soft, and just weren't giving back any of the feeling that I would expect in a racing flat. But that was just the warm-up. And this was at slower speed, so slower than 5.5 minute Ks, all the way down to as slow as 7-minute Ks. And over the next couple of weeks, I performed quite a few runs in these shoes, mainly different sorts of interval sessions, such as 10 times 1 kilometer efforts at around anaerobic threshold to 10 kilometer race pace. I did 800 meter intervals at 5 kilometer race pace. I did some very short, faster work. I did some sprints in them. And there's one thing that really stood out with these shoes. The faster I ran, the better these shoes felt. That mushiness, well, that was really only at the slow speeds. That pretty quickly went away once I got the pace up. Now, where do I define fast for these shoes? It really started kicking in once I got faster than about 440 per kilometre. On the athletics track, on the bitumen, on concrete, this shoe had quite a responsive snap to it. Just that little bit of bounce once you hit paces at 4 minutes per K or a little bit faster. And cushioning at these speeds felt quite minimal. There was no harshness in the ride at all. There was no really pronounced slap or hitting of the ground. My feet themselves weren't feeling beaten up. They were feeling quite fresh after 10 kilometres worth of intervals, which is a bit better than most shoes that I run in. Which brings me to a point that I quite like about these shoes. After interval training, my legs were feeling fresher right after the session and also the day afterwards as well. It was mainly in the calves, as the load seemed to be spread higher up into my legs, where I felt it more in my quads and glutes and hips compared to what I normally do in my calves. Given my past history of Achilles problems, I can only see as a good thing for my running. There isn't any rocker action like you get in a lot of the other carbon plated shoes. And you're not pronounced forward like you find in any others. It's much closer to a normal road running shoe. It's not really in the super shoe category here. But not everything about this shoe is great. One thing that bugs me about it is every so often I get this feeling of sloppiness across the top of the foot here. I've stopped and checked during these runs, and the tongue always seems to be in place when I do check it. But maybe what we're getting is, because it's only fixed in one spot, there is some slippage, but overall it's in place and I just feel the movement itself. Or there's some extra flex in the shoe and maybe how it deforms as you land and run that causes that slight bit of sloppiness that I feel there. It's a little bit disconcerting. It shows up mostly when I'm cornering, but not always, sometimes just when I'm running in a straight line. And speaking of corners, you definitely get some mushiness on tight turns. On a tight turn, that mushiness of the nitro foam, it's a little bit unsettling. It makes it feel like you're losing some of the stability. Now, my foot hasn't slipped inside the shoe that I've noticed. I haven't lost my footing at any point. It still seems to handle it okay. It just doesn't feel like it wants to. As a final summary, the PUMA Deviate Nitro Elite, it's light. It loves speeds faster than 440 per kilometres on good hard running surfaces. Faster the better. Feels like absolute rubbish at slow speeds. And my legs, they feel better after hard runs, especially my calves. Now, I plan on using these as a road racing shoe, and I'm likely to use them in the marathon as well. And back to the original question, is this an elite shoe? Well, I'm not sure that any shoe can really be classified as elite. To get the most out of this shoe, there definitely is a requirement to run fast. It's not a super shoe, but it's definitely a shoe designed for fast running. My last marathon I ran in the Deviate Nitros, the non-elite version. I'll definitely be replacing those for the Nitro Elites. I think they'll feel better and they'll feel faster. So runners, I'm Jason Montfort. Keep on running.